It was a cold evening on Ravos 9, a half-abandoned human colony world where silence lived longer than sound. Ethan, a lone engineer working for the outpost maintenance unit, walked down the empty loading docks with a small container in his hand. Inside were his leftovers, some warm noodles and bread he never finished at dinner. Every night he placed his leftovers near the back wall where stray creatures came to eat. Small furry scavengers that roamed the colony at night. He liked watching them, their little eyes glowing in the dark, their tails twitching with happiness when food appeared. It reminded him that kindness, even on a forgotten planet, still mattered, but tonight something was off. The wind was sharp, the sky full of strange green light from the planet's twin moons. No sound, no movement, just the quiet hum of distant machines and the echo of his own boots. Ethan set the box down like always, then looked around, expecting the small creatures to crawl out from under the broken containers. Nothing came. He frowned and waited a moment, his breath making a white cloud in the cold air. Then faintly, he heard something, soft, broken whispers. Not the kind animals make. He turned quickly, his flashlight cutting through the shadows. "Hello," he called, his voice echoing through the empty street. From the far corner of the dock, something shifted. He saw a small movement, 3 shapes huddled together under an old metal crate. He stepped closer, carefully. At first he thought they were lost children, but as the light touched their faces, he froze. Their eyes reflected the light, large, glowing softly with hues of violet and blue. Their skin was pale with a faint shimmer. Not human at all, they were girls, alien girls, thin, scared, and trembling. They stared at the food he had placed down as if it were gold. Ethan took a slow breath, his heart racing. The oldest one looked maybe 16 by human guess, her dark silver hair messy and covered in dust. The middle one clung to her arm, while the youngest hid behind both of them. Peeking out with tearful eyes, they looked hungry, truly hungry, the kind that showed in every bone. Ethan didn't move closer, afraid he might scare them. He knelt down slowly and pushed the container of food toward them. "It's okay," he said softly. "You can eat." The eldest girl looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came. Her hands shook as she reached forward, then pulled back unsure. The middle girl made a soft sound. Like a whimper, finally, the youngest crawled out, grabbed a piece of bread, and quickly bit into it. The others followed, tearing small pieces, eating fast, their eyes darting between Ethan and the shadows around them. Ethan's chest tightened. He had seen refugees before, miners, runaways, but never like this. Their clothes were torn, their skin marked with faint burn lines that looked like symbols. Someone had hurt them badly. He looked around again, making sure no patrols were near. "Where did you come from?" he asked quietly. No answer, only the sound of soft chewing and small gasps as they ate too fast. The eldest raised her head and pointed toward the dark sky. "Ship," she whispered, her voice rough and broken. "Crash." "Bad people." Ethan frowned, understanding slowly. They had escaped from somewhere, maybe a slave ship or a crash site. He could feel their fear, their fragile hope. He took off his jacket and placed it near them. The youngest immediately wrapped herself in it, shivering. A sharp sound cut through the air. Whir, click. The sound of scanning drones. Ethan's blood ran cold. Patrol drones were out tonight, searching for something or someone. He quickly motioned to the girls, "Hide. Now." They didn't understand the words, but they felt the fear in his voice. He pointed behind a stack of containers and they crawled there quietly. Ethan turned off his flashlight, pressing his back to the wall. Red light swept across the ground as 2 drones hovered past. Scanning the area, one paused, its beam stopping just inches from the food box. Ethan held his breath. After a long moment, the drones moved on. Fading into the distance, silence returned. Ethan slowly exhaled and turned to the girls. They were trembling, eyes wide with terror. He crouched beside them and said softly, "It's okay. They're gone." The eldest one looked up at him, her lip trembling. Then, in the quietest voice he had ever heard, she said, "Please, don't send us back." Ethan froze. Something about the way she said it, the way her voice cracked on please, broke something inside him. He looked at the 3 of them, so small, so fragile, yet still alive. He knew then he couldn't walk away, not tonight, not ever. He reached out his hand slowly and said, "You're safe now." For the first time, the eldest girl's eyes softened, and a tear rolled down her cheek. And in that silent moment, under the pale light of Ravos 9's moons, A human and three lost alien girls shared a promise that would change all their lives. The wind outside howled like a lonely song, echoing through the empty streets of the colony. Ethan guided the three alien girls through the narrow alley. His flashlight dimmed to a soft glow. They followed close behind, quiet as ghosts, their small feet barely making a sound on the cracked floor. The youngest still clung to his jacket, her eyes wide, glowing faintly in the darkness. He could feel their fear, as if every shadow carried a memory they wanted to forget. He led them to his small workshop, a place made from scrap metal and half-broken tech. Hidden behind old power units inside, the lights were weak but warm, and the air smelled faintly of machine oil and dust. Ethan motioned for them to sit, then closed the door and sealed it with a manual lock. "You're safe here," he said softly, though he wasn't sure if they understood. The eldest girl looked around carefully, her eyes darting from one object to another. Tools, screens, metal parts, everything strange to her. She seemed both scared and curious. Like a lost child in an unknown world, Ethan went to the small heater, turned it on, and opened a pack of dry food. The crackling warmth filled the room, and soon the air began to soften. He handed them cups of water first. Motioning how to drink, they copied his movements, taking small, careful sips. The middle girl coughed after the first gulp, her throat too dry. Ethan quickly fetched a small med spray from his desk and offered it. "It's okay," he said kindly. "It helps." The eldest hesitated, then nodded for her sister to take it. Her trust came slowly, like the first drop of rain after a drought. When they finished eating, Ethan sat across from them. He wanted to ask questions, but he didn't want to frighten them. Still, he needed to understand who hurt you. He asked quietly, pointing at the faint burn marks on their arms. The eldest didn't speak at first, then pulled her sleeve higher, revealing a strange pattern burned into her skin, shaped like a circle of chains. Her voice trembled as she said, "Slavers. They took us from home." Ethan clenched his jaw, anger rising inside him. He had heard rumors of human and alien traffickers in the outer sectors, people who sold others for work or experiments. But seeing it with his own eyes made it real. He shook his head slowly. "You're not going back there." The middle sister, shy and gentle, spoke next in broken English. "They follow," she whispered, pointing toward the ceiling as if the danger could still see her. Ethan frowned, then turned toward his radar unit in the corner. It was an old device, but it still worked. He turned it on. Scanning for signals, for a moment nothing appeared, but then a faint red pulse blinked on the edge of the screen. A tracking frequency, distant but closing. Ethan muttered under his breath. "They're still looking for you." The eldest caught his tone and tensed. "We run?" she asked, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. Ethan thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, not yet," he said. "They'll search the open streets first. You stay here. I'll block their signal." He rushed to his workbench, grabbing wires, chips, and an old signal jammer he had half-built months ago. His hands moved fast, his mind racing through calculations. He worked in silence for minutes. The only sound was the soft hum of machines and the faint crackle of the heater. Finally, he flipped a switch, and the radar screen went dark. The red pulse vanished. "There," he said, smiling slightly. "Now they can't trace you." The girls didn't understand his words fully, but they saw his calm face and felt safer. The youngest crawled closer to him, touching his arm gently. Her tiny fingers left faint blue marks of warmth against his skin. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft and shaky. Ethan smiled down at her. "You're welcome." "Kid?" Then the eldest suddenly stood, her expression serious. She pointed to his door. "No safe long," she said slowly. Ethan frowned. "Why?" The eldest hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver shard, a piece of metal no bigger than a coin. It pulsed faintly with blue light. "They put this in ship," she said. "Make signal." Ethan took it carefully, scanning it with his portable analyzer. His eyes widened. "A transponder. They can track this anywhere." The girls looked at him, confused. He sighed. "It's okay. I'll destroy it." He placed the shard into his plasma cutter and watched it melt into nothing but ash. The blue light faded completely. When it was done, the eldest finally exhaled, her shoulders lowering for the first time since he met her. For a while the room stayed quiet. The heater hummed softly, and the youngest fell asleep wrapped in Ethan's jacket. The middle sister leaned against the wall, Eyes half closed, the eldest sat near the heater, watching Ethan with a mix of caution and gratitude. "Why, you help?" she asked finally, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan looked up from his workbench and smiled faintly. "Because," he said, "no one else did when I needed help once." Her eyes softened, and she nodded slowly for the first time. She believed him. Outside, the wind carried the distant sound of engines, patrol ships searching for something. Inside, the human and the three alien sisters sat in the warm light, sharing food and quiet hope. They didn't know it yet, but their fates were now tied together, and far above, in the cold night sky, a faint red beacon blinked one last time before disappearing into silence. The night on Ravos 9 grew colder, and the sound of distant thunder rolled across the empty colony plains. Ethan checked the old steel door twice, making sure it was sealed, then turned back toward the three alien girls who sat quietly by the small heater. The youngest one was asleep, curled in his jacket like a small animal seeking warmth, her faintly glowing skin reflecting the flicker of the heater's flame. The middle one watched Ethan work, her bright blue eyes following every move, while the eldest sat apart, her body still tense, ready to run if things went wrong. Ethan didn't blame her. Trust was something built with time, and they had been given none. He moved around the small workshop, collecting spare blankets, filling 3 cups with clean water and setting out a few pieces of ration bread. "This is all I've got," he said softly, placing it near them. The middle sister gave a small smile, awkward but real, and whispered, "Good. Thank you." The eldest still said nothing, though her eyes flickered with something new, something like respect. After a long silence, Ethan decided to try again. "My name's Ethan," he said, pointing to himself. Then he pointed at them waiting. The youngest was asleep, but the middle one placed her hand on her chest. "Nai?" she said shyly. The eldest followed. "Lyra." "And her?" Ethan asked, nodding to the sleeping girl. Lyra looked at her softly. "Sorry. 3 sisters, alone. Hungry, scared, and far from home." Ethan repeated their names quietly, trying to remember. "Lyra, Nai, sorry. Got it." Hearing her name from him made Lyra's lips twitch slightly, almost a smile. Ethan sat on the floor beside them, the hum of the heater filling the silence. "Where's your home?" he asked gently. Lyra looked down, her voice faint. "Gone. Burned." Nai lowered her head, her small hands gripping the blanket tighter. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to say something comforting, but no words could fix what they had lost. He had seen colonies destroyed before, but seeing it through their broken voices made it feel heavier. He sighed, then stood up. "You should rest," he said softly. "I'll keep watch." Hours passed slowly. The workshop grew warmer, the air thick with the soft rhythm of their breathing. Ethan sat near the door, holding an old blaster across his lap, his eyes half on the radar, half on the girls. He thought about Earth, the lights of New Seattle, the crowded streets, the laughter he used to hear every night. Now here he was, hiding in the dark with 3 alien children who had nowhere to go. He didn't know why, but it felt right. Helping them made the silence less empty. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting his thoughts fade. Suddenly, a sharp ping echoed from the radar console. Ethan jumped up, checking the screen. A faint movement, heat signatures, 2 of them. Approaching slowly from the north, he cursed under his breath and turned off the heater's light. Plunging the room into near darkness, Lyra stirred instantly, her senses sharper than his. "Danger," she whispered. Ethan nodded, pressing his finger to his lips. "Quiet." The footsteps outside were heavy, metallic. 2 patrol guards, alien mercenaries in armor, moved through the narrow street, scanning the ground with red lights. Their voices carried through the thin walls, harsh and mechanical. "3 escaped from wreck," one said in a guttural tone. "Track shows near Sector 7, the other replied. "No one hides from the syndicate." Ethan's pulse quickened. He motioned for Lyra and Nai to stay behind the workbench. Then he grabbed a small device from his desk, a signal scrambler, and activated it. A soft electric hum filled the air, enough to blur his life signs on scanners. The mercenaries stopped outside his door. Red beams scanning the metal. Ethan froze, every muscle tense. The door vibrated slightly as one of them pressed against it. Seconds passed like hours, then finally the sound faded, and the footsteps moved away. He waited another full minute before breathing out. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes, her voice trembling. "You protect?" Ethan gave a small nod. "Always," he whispered back. Nai crawled closer, wrapping the blanket tighter around her and whispering, "They bad people. They hurt." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not anymore," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." He checked the radar again, clear for now, the danger had passed. But he knew it wouldn't be the last time. He sat back down, feeling the weight of exhaustion but refusing to rest. Lyra watched him quietly, studying his tired face, his calm voice, and the strange warmth he carried. "Why you risk?" she asked softly. "Not your kind." Ethan smiled faintly, eyes on the door. "Doesn't matter what kind you are," he said. "Hungry is hungry. Scared is scared. You needed help. That's enough." Lyra didn't respond, but her eyes shimmered in the dim light, reflecting both confusion and admiration. The storm outside began to fade, replaced by gentle rain tapping against the metal roof. Ethan handed her a spare blanket, and this time she didn't hesitate to take it. She lay down near her sisters, whispering something in their language, a soft lullaby that sounded like wind and stars. Ethan leaned back against the wall. Listening, he felt strangely peaceful despite everything. The world outside might still be cruel, but inside this small metal room, kindness had found a place to survive. As his eyes grew heavy, the radar flickered once more, showing a faint new signal far above the colony. A ship, large, silent, and unknown, hovered just outside the planet's orbit. Ethan didn't see it yet, but when morning came, that signal would change everything. A thin line of light crept through a crack in the roof, painting the floor with soft silver. The storm had passed, but a strange stillness now covered the colony like a heavy blanket. Ethan had barely slept, his blaster resting beside him and his ears tuned to every sound. The three sisters still slept close together, their small bodies wrapped in spare blankets. Even in sleep, they looked tense, as if they feared waking up in chains again. Ethan got up quietly and walked to his old scanner system. He had rebuilt it from broken parts months ago. Never expected it to matter much. Now it felt like his only window into the outside world. He powered it on and waited, the screen humming to life with flickering lines and static waves. But then something appeared, something he didn't expect. A red dot blinked at the top edge of the screen, hovering far above the planet's surface. Not a patrol drone, not a trade vessel. It was too large. Too still, a silent ship, hiding in orbit. Ethan stared at the signal, unease crawling into his chest. He zoomed in, trying to get more detail, but the ship was blocking scans. A stealth cruiser, maybe? Or worse, a slaver command ship. He ran a diagnostic sweep, and after a few seconds, a data trace confirmed it. Encrypted pulse detected, slave retrieval beacon. Just then, Lyra stirred, sitting up with tired eyes. She noticed the look on his face and asked softly, "Bad news?" Ethan nodded slowly. "They're here." Her lips pressed tight as she walked over, staring at the blinking red dot. "Syndicate ship," she said, her voice like cold stone. "They come to take back." Ethan looked at her. "But how did they find this planet?" "We shut down all signals." Lyra didn't answer right away, but then she opened her hand and showed him something small. An oval shard of metal, no bigger than a fingernail. "This, inside sorry?" she said, eyes lowering in shame. Ethan stared at it, realizing it was a bio-tracker hidden under the skin. "They tag us. Like things," she added quietly. He took the tracker from her gently, anger burning inside him. These girls had escaped slavery, crossed planets, and now the very people who hurt them were hunting them again. "I'll remove the tracker completely," he said, "and I'll find a way to block their signal." Lyra touched his hand briefly, a silent thank you. Ethan spent the next hour building a signal jammer more powerful than the old one. He wired it directly into the colony's power line. Risking a complete outage, sparks flew, metal groaned, and his fingers bled from rushing. When he flipped the switch, the power surged, psst, then went silent. The radar screen blinked twice and then faded. Signal lost outside, the skies above Ravos 9 began to shift. Clouds moved unnaturally fast, and a faint humming sound passed over the colony like a warning. A ship was descending, slow and hidden in mist. Ethan ran outside and looked up. Though the sky looked empty, he could feel something there. Like a storm building with no rain. He rushed back in, locked the door, and turned to Lyra. "They're here," he said, "and they won't knock." Nye hugged Sari tightly, while Lyra stood, her body ready to fight. Ethan pulled open a hidden panel in the floor, revealing a narrow tunnel beneath. "Old sewer shaft," he said. Leads to the canyon outskirts. Use it if I tell you to run. Lyra looked at him sharply. What about you? Ethan grabbed his old rifle and slung it across his shoulder. I'll stall them, he said simply. Lyra stepped forward, grabbing his arm. You're not one of us. They'll kill you. Ethan met her eyes, calm but firm. Doesn't matter, he said. You're not just anyone anymore. Then a heavy boom shook the walls. The door shook under impact, metal bending slightly. Outside, robotic voices shouted orders in alien tongues. Lyra's eyes widened as she backed toward the tunnel. Ethan looked at her one last time. If I don't come back, you lead them. You get them out. She didn't answer with words, only nodded. Then she turned and disappeared into the shaft with her sisters. Ethan stood alone now, heart racing. Rifle aimed at the door. The second bang came louder. Sparks flying from the hinges. A shadow moved outside, and a red light scanned across the wall. They were breaking in. Armed. Trained and heartless, but Ethan wasn't afraid. He had something they didn't, a reason to fight. The final crash blew the door open. Smoke filled the room as armored slavers stepped in. Ethan took a deep breath, raised his rifle, and whispered to himself, You picked the wrong human. Then he pulled the trigger. Smoke filled the small room as armored boots slammed down on the floor. 3 syndicate hunters stepped inside, their black armor glowing with red veins of power. Their helmets hissed with breath. Scanning the room with sharp sensors, they expected fear, surrender, maybe even crying, but what they saw instead was a human standing tall, unshaken. Rifle pointed straight at them. Ethan didn't wait. The moment the first hunter raised its weapon, he fired. The blast hit the hunter's chest, pushing him backward into the metal wall. Sparks flew, the lights flickered. The other 2 turned toward him fast, their weapons glowing blue with energy. Ethan dove behind a workbench, rolling across the floor just as a bolt of plasma hit the spot he stood seconds before. He gritted his teeth and pulled a wrench from his belt, tossing it to the far side of the room. The noise distracted one of the hunters, just long enough for Ethan to aim again. He fired, this time at the leg. The shot was true, and the hunter stumbled, crashing into a pile of old tools. The last one roared something in an alien language and charged. Ethan ducked behind a steel pillar, barely missing a blade of light that sliced through the air. His breathing was heavy, his arm bleeding from a cut he didn't feel before. But he couldn't stop, not now. They were here for the girls, and he was the only thing between them and a cage. He pulled out a flash charge from his jacket, an old device from his mining days. He pressed the button, threw it, and shut his eyes. Boom! A flash of white light exploded in the room. Blinding everything for 2 seconds, Ethan leapt forward, grabbing a fallen blaster from one of the stunned hunters. He didn't hesitate. 2 quick shots sent them crashing to the floor. Sparks danced in the smoke, silence returned, and the air smelled of metal and fire. Ethan stood still, chest rising and falling with every breath. His shoulder ached, and his side was bruised, but he was alive. He stared at the bodies around him, motionless. Defeated, they weren't dead, but they were down long enough. He dropped the rifle and limped toward the hidden tunnel. As he opened the panel, 3 pairs of glowing eyes looked up at him. Lyra climbed out first, followed by Nye holding Sari's hand. Lyra looked at the mess in the room and then at Ethan. You fought them, she said in disbelief. Ethan nodded, wiping blood from his cheek. They didn't come for me, he said, but they found me anyway. Sari ran to him, hugging his leg tightly. You okay? She asked in her tiny voice. Ethan crouched and smiled. I'm okay because you're okay. Nye looked around nervously. More coming? Ethan checked his scanner. 2 more ships had entered low orbit. He nodded. Yes, more are coming, and they won't stop this time. Lyra stepped forward. We leave? Ethan walked to the console, typing quickly, opening the map of the colony. There's an old transport ship hidden under the scrapyard, he said. I fixed it months ago. It works. He turned to them. You'll fly it, get out of here, reach a safe zone. Lyra frowned. You come with? Ethan paused, then shook his head. They'll follow that ship. Someone needs to stay behind, make noise, buy time. The girls went quiet, especially Sari, who looked up at him with wide eyes. No leave, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan placed a hand on her head gently. I'm not leaving you. I'm helping you leave. Lyra stepped closer, her jaw clenched. You saved us. Now we save you. Ethan smiled, but his eyes were heavy with decision. This isn't goodbye. he said softly. It's just, until later. Suddenly, the scanner beeped again. Incoming signal jam detected. They're jamming the skies, Ethan said. You have 15 minutes before they block all escape. He handed Lyra the coordinates and access code to the ship. You're strong, he said. Stronger than you think. Lyra reached out and touched his hand. You are not weak, she whispered. You are hope. They didn't waste time. Ethan led them through the back alleys, avoiding drones, hiding behind rusted machines. At the edge of the scrapyard, he pointed to a hidden hatch beneath the trash piles. You go first. I'll trigger the launch from the control tower. Lyra looked at him one last time, her eyes shining with something more than gratitude, loyalty. Without words, she turned and disappeared with her sisters into the ship. Ethan climbed a nearby ladder to the old tower, sweat running down his brow. He activated the power circuit, overloading the sensors to confuse the enemy ships. He watched from the broken glass as the hidden transport slowly rose into the air. A smile touched his lips as he whispered, "Fly far, and never look back." Outside, Syndicate dropships screamed across the sky, but they were too late. The girls were already gone, and Ethan was ready to face whatever came next. The hidden transport ship climbed higher into the sky, its engines glowing quietly as it cut through the clouds. Inside the cockpit, Lyra sat at the controls, her hands trembling. Not from fear, but from everything she was leaving behind. Nye sat beside her, pressing buttons the way Ethan had shown her only moments before. Sari sat in the back, hugging Ethan's old jacket to her chest, her small eyes staring out the window. Below them, the colony grew smaller, and the man who saved them didn't come with them. Lyra's heart twisted as she remembered Ethan's voice, firm, calm, full of care. You go, I stay, he had said. They'll follow the ship. If I'm with you, you don't get far. But she didn't believe that was the full truth. He stayed because he wanted them to be free. He stayed because he knew someone had to make the hard choice. She slammed a fist on the dashboard. No, she whispered. This is wrong. Nye looked at her, worried. We go, we're safe. Lyra shook her head. Not without him. Suddenly, the ship jolted, an energy pulse hitting the outer hull. Sari screamed as the lights flickered. Nye grabbed the controls. They shoot! Lyra's eyes flew to the scanner. A Syndicate warship had locked onto them from orbit. They had one chance to escape its pull. One final burst before the engines overheated. And that's when Lyra saw it. On the long-range radar, a small heat signature near the colony tower. Ethan's signal. He was still alive, still holding the jammers, still feeding fake trails to protect their path. If he let go even for a moment, they'd be caught. Sari crawled up beside her. He coming? Lyra didn't answer because the truth burned in her chest. He wasn't coming, he was staying. So they could live. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the engines and the ping of enemy scanners filled the air. Then Lyra stood up, fists clenched. No, she said. We turn back, Nye gasped. What? They want the ship, Lyra said, not us. We land, get him, and we all leave together. But what if we get caught? Nye asked, eyes wide with fear. Lyra looked straight at her. Then we get caught as one. Or we fly as one. Sari nodded quickly. Her voice small but brave. We go back. Lyra spun the ship, pulling hard on the controls. The engines roared, the alarm blared, but she didn't stop. She set a steep dive back toward the colony. Enemy fire streaked past the windows. Missing by inches, the ship rattled violently. But she held steady through the clouds. The scorched buildings appeared again, and at the top of the tower, a single man stood with smoke rising around him. Ethan turned as he saw the ship drop from the sky like a falling star. He blinked, confused, then stunned. No. He whispered. They came back. The hatch opened midair and a rope ladder dropped down. Lyra leaned out, her voice yelling against the wind. Get in! Ethan hesitated for a second, still stunned, then he laughed. A real, loud, messy laugh. He slung his rifle over his shoulder, sprinted across the rooftop and leapt. His hands gripped the ladder just as the ship pulled upward. Blaster fire rained around them as enemy drones caught up. Ethan climbed fast, heart pounding, legs aching at the top. Lyra grabbed his arm and yanked him inside. The hatch slammed shut, and the sisters all wrapped around him in a tight hug. You crazy kids, he said breathlessly, smiling through the pain. You came back. Sari looked up, tears in her eyes. We not leave you. In the cockpit, Nye hit the last sequence Ethan had taught her. Engine overdrive. The ship surged forward faster than before. The drones gave chase, but they couldn't keep up within moments. They broke through the clouds and into the stars. Back in the cabin, Ethan sat on the floor, holding Sari in one arm and resting his head against the wall. You had a choice, he said to Lyra. You could have been free. Lyra knelt beside him. I chose, she replied. I chose my family. He looked at her, surprised. Family? She nodded. You gave us food, warmth, life, she said. You became ours. The ship crossed the final defense line of Ravos 9 and vanished into deep space. The Syndicate ship scanned for them, but the signal trail had been wiped clean. They had escaped together, and somewhere among the stars, a human man sat beside 3 alien girls who had once been scared, hunted and lost. Now they had something none of them ever expected. A family and a future. Weeks passed, then months. The stars outside the ship changed as it moved from one system to another, hiding in the shadows, dodging patrols, and jumping through old warp lanes Ethan knew from his early work as a mechanic. No one chased them anymore, but none of them truly relaxed. Not until they reached a small green planet far outside Syndicate control, a place known only to traders and wanderers, called Verona's Rest. The people there didn't ask questions. If you arrived breathing and didn't cause trouble, you were welcome. It was the perfect place to start over. Ethan built a small home at the edge of the forest, using his hands, tools, and help from the locals. He fixed old machines in town, traded parts, and worked quietly. But he was never alone. Every morning, Sari would sit on his shoulders while he walked to the market. I spent hours beside him in the workshop, watching, learning, copying everything he did. Lyra, silent and watchful, helped organize his tools, sort parts, and deal with traders, her sharp eyes seeing every lie, every trick. They had been through so much together, but now they were healing. Ethan no longer felt like a man hiding from the past. He felt like something else, something he never expected to be again. A protector, a teacher, and a father. One morning as the sun rose, Lyra walked up the hill to where Ethan was repairing an old solar panel. She held a small, dusty box in her hands. What's that? He asked, wiping sweat from his brow. She opened the lid gently, revealing a metal inside, silver with a faded star in the center. Found in ship cargo, she said. Has your name? Ethan looked at it, surprised. It was from years ago, an old award given to him after a rescue mission on Mars Colony 7. He had forgotten it even existed. I didn't do much to earn it, he muttered. Lyra shook her head slowly. You do now. That same night as the stars came out. A ship landed quietly at the edge of the forest, not a Syndicate ship. Not this time. It was painted with red and gold stripes, the mark of the Free Planet Alliance. Out stepped a woman in silver armor, her eyes scanning the area. She walked toward Ethan's home with purpose. Lyra saw her first, stepping in front of the door protectively. But the woman stopped, raised both hands, and said, I'm not here to hurt anyone, I came to thank him. Inside, Ethan stood slowly, recognizing her face. Commander Mesa? He said, surprised. She nodded, smiling. Word travels. A slaver ship destroyed. 3 survivors protected. A human fighting off hunters alone. People talk. He shrugged. Didn't expect to be famous, she looked past him, seeing Sari sleeping peacefully by the fire. You're not famous, she said. You're something better, a story of hope. She handed him a data drive. The Alliance wants you to train people, how to build shelters, hide survivors' jam signals. Ethan looked at the sisters, then back at the commander. I'll help, he said. But I'm not leaving them. Mesa smiled wider. Wouldn't ask you to. The next weeks changed everything. A new base was built near the forest edge, led by the Alliance but guarded by the people of Verona's Rest. Ethan trained volunteers. Lyra helped teach refugees how to spot hidden trackers. And I ran between workshops fixing what others gave up on, and Sari made everyone smile. One day, while walking past the hangar, Ethan saw a small crowd gathered near a broadcast screen. On it played a news story. 3 alien girls rescued from Syndicate slavers by lone human, now leaders in rebuilding effort. He chuckled, watching the sisters talk in front of the camera. Shy but proud, a child tugged his sleeve, looking up. Are you the man who saved them? The boy asked. Ethan looked down, thought for a moment, then smiled. No, he said. They saved me, that night. By the fire, Lyra sat beside him, holding a warm mug. The past still hurts, she said softly, but not like before. Ethan nodded, looking at the stars. Pain fades when you fill it with better things. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You gave us that, she whispered. You gave us a future. He didn't reply, just placed a hand over hers and sat there as the fire crackled, not needing words anymore. They had found each other in a broken world. Now they were part of something greater. A quiet victory, written not in battles but in love, in choice, and in the courage to return for someone who mattered. And in a galaxy full of war, that was the strongest story of all.